The 9,221st meeting of the Security Council is called to order. Before we begin the meeting today, I invite all members to join me in observing a minute of silence in honor of all the victims of terrorism. We have also received reports of the tragic killing of an Irish peacekeeper and injuries to 4 others in Lebanon yesterday. We pray for the speedy recovery. I would invite all members to honor the peacekeepers who have laid down their lives over the years in the course of their duties. Please stand for a minute of silence. Please. The provisional agenda for this meeting is threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts, global counter-terrorism approach, principles, and the way forward. The agenda is adopted. I would like to warmly welcome the distinguished ministers and other high-level representatives. Your presence today underscores the importance of the subject matter under discussion. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the following briefers to participate in the meeting. Mr. Vladimir Voronkov, Under-Secretary General, United Nations Office of Counter Terrorism, Mr. Wei Xiong Chen, Acting Executive Director of the Counter Terrorism Executive Directorate, and Ms. Anjali Vijay Kulthe, Nursing Officer at the Kama and Albles Hospital in Mumbai, a survivor of the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. It is so decided. I now give the floor to Ms. Anjali Vijay Kulthe.
Namaste,
Honorable Chair, Excellencies, Namaste to all of you. I am Anjali Vijay Kulthe from Mumbai, India. I am a staff nurse at the Kama and Albles Hospital in Mumbai. This is one of the earliest hospitals in India, established exclusively for women and children in 1886 with support from private donors. I have been working at this hospital for the last 22 years. I am one of the fortunate ones who survived the terrorist attack on the hospital on the night of 26 November 2008. As a victim and survivor of terrorism, I bring to this Council's notice the voice of trauma and sorrow endured by families of victims and survivors of terrorist attacks from across the world. On 26 November 2008, I had a night shift in the antenatal care unit from 8 p.m. 20 pregnant women were under my charge that night. I had 2 helpers, Hira and Madhu, assisting me. An hour later, we were informed that the city's main railway station, around a mile away from the hospital, has been stormed by terrorists. Our senior officials called and asked us to prepare for an emergency. While we began preparing, we heard gunshots being fired at around 10:30 p.m. from behind the hospital. I and my helpers quickly moved to the window of my ward's bathroom. We noticed that two persons with guns entered the hospital after jumping over the wall. One of them fired at our window. We closely escaped the bullet, which hit one of my helpers' thumb and the lights of the ward. Hira's thumb was profusely bleeding and the room became dark. I escorted her to the accident ward on the ground floor for the treatment. I also informed the chief medical officer of the hospital that terrorists have entered our hospital and are firing. As I rushed towards the ward on first floor, I saw the same two terrorists shooting the two security guards of the hospital. Both the security guards fell on the floor with their bodies heavily bleeding. I was extremely scared. I gathered courage and rushed to the first floor. I closed the main iron door and shifted all the patients to the pantry with the help of another staff. I locked the door and switched off the lights so that the shooters could not see the patients. At all costs, I wanted to protect my patients from firing by terrorists. While I was locking the door, I saw two terrorists rushing towards the second floor and being chased by some policemen. We heard firing continuously. We experienced heavy shocks because of explosion of grenades. While we were hiding in the ward, I thought to myself, death is inevitable in this life. Why not die valiantly? I consoled my petrified patients who were in advanced stages of pregnancy. I feared that some of my patients would go into labor due to fear-induced high blood pressure. Such a condition could be extremely serious for both the mother and baby's life. And my fear came alive. Suddenly, a patient shrieked that she was going into labor. My medical officer could not come down from second floor. I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do next. Suddenly, I felt my uniform gave me the courage, and my passion for nursing gave me clarity of thought. I escorted my patient to the pregnancy ward, but she was scared and reluctant to come with me to the ward. I assured her and requested her to follow me. While we were climbing the staircase, we heard heavy gun firing and hand grenade explosions. With faith, I managed to get my patient to the labor room. A while later, we were able to midwife a healthy baby. Then I returned to my ward to check on my other 19 patients. We spent the whole night in complete darkness with patients locked up in rooms. We opened the doors next day morning as the police arrived. It was hard to believe that we were alive. I could not sleep peacefully for several nights and woke up many times in middle of many nights with vivid memories of the terrorist attacks. I shiver even today as I recall the night of terrorist attacks. While the terrorists were killing human beings like insects, I am happy that I was able to save lives of 20 pregnant women and their unborn babies. Although the terror and horror of that night is still alive with me, I soothe myself by thinking of the several lives I and my colleagues in the hospital saved. One month after this terrorist attack, I was summoned by authorities to identify the lone surviving terrorist Ajmal Kasab of these attacks. Although my family feared reprisals for testifying in the court, I chose to be the witness. In the jail, when I recognized him, he smiled sarcastically and said, "Madam, you recognized me correctly. I am Ajmal Kasab." Kasab did not have an iota of remorse, no shame, no guilt. His sense of victory haunts me even today. Whenever I see news reports on television about terrorist attacks anywhere in the world, my heart goes out for the victims and survivors of such attacks who live rest of their lives in trauma. We, the victims of 26/11 Mumbai attacks, continue to wait for justice, as the sponsors of these dastardly attacks remain free even after 14 years. Too many lives have been lost, too many children have been orphaned, too many people have been traumatized. I request the international community through this council to bring the sponsors of 26/11 Mumbai attacks to justice and give the families of victims a closure. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Kulte for her briefing. I will now make a statement in my capacity as the External Affairs Minister of India. Excellencies, at the outset, I acknowledge the presence of the Honourable Ministers of Ireland, UAE, the UK, USA, Kenya, and Ghana, and all high-level representatives. I thank you all for accepting my invitation to participate in today's briefing. I would also like to thank Ambassador Vladimir Voronkov, the Undersecretary General for Counter Terrorism, and Acting Executive Director Wei Xiong Chen for their briefings to the Security Council today. We value the work of the UNOCT in leading the UN efforts to assist member states by providing them necessary capacity building through its various global programs. I also thank Nurse Anjali Kulte, a valiant victim of the 26/11 terror attacks, from whom you've heard just now, who has vividly shared with us her recollection of the human costs of terrorism. Her testimony is a stark reminder to the Council and the international community that justice is yet to be delivered to the victims of several terrorist incidents, including the 26/11 Mumbai attack. This Council is well aware that terrorism is an existential threat to international peace and security. It knows no borders, nationality, or race, and is a challenge that the international community must combat collectively. India faced the horrors of cross-border terrorism long before the world took serious note of it. Over the decades, we lost thousands of innocent civilian lives, but we fought terrorism resolutely, bravely, and with a zero-tolerance approach. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi has declared, we consider that even a single attack is one too many, and even a single life lost is one too many. So we will not rest till terrorism is uprooted. Today's briefing is part of India's ongoing efforts in the Security Council to reinvigorate the counter-terrorism agenda. And that is overdue because the threat of terrorism has actually become even more serious. We have seen the expansion of al-Qaida, Daesh, Boko Haram, and al-Shabaab and their affiliates. At the other end of the spectrum are lone wolf attacks inspired by online radicalization and biases. But somewhere in all of this, we cannot forget that old habits and established networks are still alive, especially in South Asia. The contemporary epicenter of terrorism remains very much active, whatever gloss may be applied to minimize unpleasant realities. On this occasion, let me therefore highlight 4 specific challenges with which the counter-terrorism architecture is currently grappling. 1. The issue of terror financing and state culpability, whether by commission or omission. The world may no longer be willing to buy the justifications and cover-ups as in the past. Through bitter experience, we know that terror is terror, whatever the explanation. The question now arises as to the responsibilities of the state from whose soil such actions are planned, supported, and perpetrated. 2. Ensuring the integrity and accountability of the counter-terror multilateral mechanisms and their working methods. They are on occasion opaque, sometimes driven by agendas, and at times even pushed without evidence. 3. Addressing double standards in countering terrorism, leading to concerns of politicization. Uniform criteria are not applied to sanctioning and prosecuting terrorists. It would seem sometimes that the ownership of terrorism is more important than its actual perpetration or its consequences. And 4. Countering threats from the misuse of new and emerging technologies by terrorists. This is likely to be the next frontier of our battle. Let me dilate on each of these aspects briefly. By now, it is well established where and how terrorist organizations operate and under what kind of protection. Activities like recruitment, financing, and motivation are often done in the open. The days when it could be said that we were unaware are now behind us. Consequently, assigning responsibility is that much easier. The response of the sponsors of terrorism is not to give up, but to conduct and execute their agenda at an arm's length. To do this, they create narratives of limitations and difficulties. We buy such explanations at our own peril. The suggestion that states who are apparently capable on everything else but are only helpless when it comes to terrorism is ludicrous. Accountability must therefore be the bedrock of counterterrorism. The working methods of relevant mechanisms is also a subject of legitimate concern and debate. At one level, we have seen protections that come close to justification. Then there are evidence-backed proposals that are put on hold without assigning adequate reason. Conversely, there have even been recourse to anonymity so as to avoid taking ownership of untenable cases. The third challenge is how do we deal with differential standards both inside and outside the Council. For too long, some have persisted with the belief that terrorism is just another instrument or stratagem. Those invested in terrorism have used such cynicism to carry on. It is not just plain wrong, but could be downright dangerous, even for the very people whose toleration extends this far. The fourth challenge is the growing potential for the misuse of new and emerging technologies by extremists, radicals, and terrorists. Over the years, they have diversified their funding portfolio and expanded the recruitment toolkit. They exploit the anonymity afforded by new and emerging technologies such as virtual currencies for fundraising and finances. Terrorist groups are taking advantage of the openness of democratic societies, spreading false narratives, inciting hatred, and radicalizing ideologies. Taking all these into account, we need to adopt a comprehensive, contemporary, and result-oriented approach to this set of challenges. No individual state should endeavor to seek political gain from terrorism, and none of us, collectively, should ever put up with such calculations. When it comes to tackling terrorism, we must overcome political differences and manifest a zero-tolerance approach. When we began our current term in the Council last January, I had proposed an 8-point action plan on counter-terrorism to this very Council. I'm glad that some of the action points have found reflection in the presidential statement to be adopted by the Council at the end of this meeting. As the chair of the Counter Terrorism Committee of the Security Council this year, India has striven to bring these principles into the counter-terrorism architecture of the UN and into the debate on terrorism at this Council. We were privileged to host you all in Mumbai and Delhi during the special meeting of the Counter Terrorism Committee in end October. The Delhi Declaration that was adopted then is a landmark document, and with it, we hope that this Council will build on this further. Let me conclude by emphasizing that we cannot let another 9/11 of New York or 26/11 of Mumbai happen again. In the last 2 decades, terrorism has been significantly countered and its justification delegitimized. But this remains work in progress. Combating terrorism is a battle in which there is no respite. The world cannot afford attention deficits or tactical compromises. It is most of all for the Security Council to lead the global response in this regard. Today's briefing is another step in that direction. I thank you, and I now resume my duties as chair. The Council has before it the text of a statement by the President on behalf of the Council on the subject of today's meeting. I thank the Council members for the valuable contributions to this statement. In accordance with the understanding reached among the members of the Council, I shall take it that the members of the Security Council agreed to the statement, which will be issued as a document of the Security Council under the symbol S/PRST/2022/7. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.